Hello, and welcome to Running the Table, the podcast where we run through everything on the table in the world of sports. And here we are for our third edition of the NFL Draft Positional Breakdowns. We went through the quarterbacks, we covered the running backs. Now we're going on to the pass catchers in this year's draft class, the wide receivers. Who are some of the top dogs, and who are some guys that maybe are not on the radar in the first round, but could make an impact going forward? That is what we're going to cover today. Tim, my good friend, my good man, you ready to go?
Let's run it.
I don't know why you did that. I just felt the need to copy it.
Why not?
I don't know.
Got some interesting guys to look at.
Let's cover some receivers. The first one we got is Garrett Wilson of Ohio State. He is most likely the consensus wide receiver one. When looking at all of these guys, he's my wide receiver one.
Mine as well.
Yeah, he is a very springy, creative receiver. His releases are good, but not great. He has a lot of high-end speed and will just run by many corners, which is what we saw at Ohio State. He makes full extension grabs, and that leaping ability that he has really stands out. He's athletic enough to win off the line consistently. And after the catch, instead of like breaking tackles, he'll go for the juke. It's not necessarily a strength or a weakness. That's just his yards after the catch style. Some guys will brace for the hit, and other guys will try to make a man miss. Garrett Wilson will make a man miss. He is a smaller receiver, standing at 6 foot 183, but that kind of fits in the modern NFL today. He won't dominate the 50-50 balls, but when he gets open, when he gets that separation and he gets in the open field, he is an absolute stud. When looking at his film, he does have some concentration drops, but like all of these guys do. There is literally like not one wide receiver in this draft class.
Nobody's going to be perfect in terms of catches.
Yeah, that doesn't have an occasional lapse in concentration from time to time.
Yeah, I mean, with Garrett Wilson, in my opinion, I think he's the best combination of speeds, hands, and explosiveness and route running. He has a lot of talent to take it to the next level wherever he falls. We talked about 6 foot 183.
He got them hands.
Yeah, not the biggest guy, but with that 4.38 40 speed, he can toast a lot of people in single coverage, and his route running can make guys look stupid at times. He's a pretty strong receiver for his size, but you talk about the 50-50 balls, it's not necessarily a strength. He does pretty well with trying to make his separation. You talked about his hands. He has really solid hands, but especially you talk about finishing the season on a high note. He really finished the season on a tear, putting up 27 catches for 371 yards and 6 touchdowns over his last 3 appearances. So he really finished on a high note. I think that's really what helped.
Garrett Wilson was good at football.
Yes, he was, and he will continue to be so. One of the things I think that is a big strength for him is his spec catching. He makes catches that other guys just really can't, even if he doesn't necessarily create the space that he's able to on so many of his different routes. One of the things that I have, or a couple things that I have that are slight knocks for him, his footwork can definitely use some work. Despite his route running being great, sometimes he does have a little bit of lapse in some of that. And I think that one of the things that he can improve on a lot is, from looking at a lot of his film, he stutter steps a lot. I think he can work on like diversifying some of his releases to beat press coverage, and really trying to get himself open on some of those first couple of steps. And I think if he improves on that, I think he can really make a big difference in his overall play. You look at a guy like Davante Adams. I obviously know how much you like him and his very unique set of ways to beat the press and all coming off the line. I think
don't talk about Davante Adams here unless it's in a positive light. Then we talk about Davante Adams.
That's why I'm talking about Davante Adams.
Well, guess what? I missed Davante Adams. So sue me.
Because his unique set of releases off the line. And I think Garrett Wilson could learn a thing or two from that concept and improve his route running right off the line, especially in beating press.
Yeah. A lot to like about Garrett Wilson. If there's one guy to be compared to, you'd want it to be a guy like Davante Adams, the best receiver in the NFL. So I miss him. I will miss him.
You bring some slight depression into the chat.
Well, you know what? Let's move on to the next guy, which is Drake London of USC. When Garrett Wilson is your smaller kind of guy, Drake London is your typical, more physical receiver.
He's got some size to him.
Yeah, he's standing at 6'4", 219 pounds. He plays outside of his frame with the ability to make catches outside of it, plays with great contact balance. We look at Garrett Wilson and he makes a juke after the catch. Drake London is just barreling right into defenders and just like, get off me. He refuses to go down on first contact. He shows insane body control and sideline awareness. And the only concern that I really have is his downfield speed. He didn't look too much faster against these Pac-12 corners, but that's okay. He has a lot of other really great traits to like.
Yeah, I mean, as you pointed out, his size makes him an immediate threat with that height and weight. He's shown he can play inside or out, running both in the slot or lined up outside. He's got good athleticism, and you talk about the body control for a receiver of his size, which obviously makes him a mismatch on most defensive backs teams are going to try to put on him. He's got solid deep ball route running, but one of the things that I think that's a big strength for him is ball tracking. He's a 50-50 ball machine if you put the ball in place for him to go up and get it. But in terms of just some general weaknesses that I look at him, just overall lack of quickness or fluidity. You talk about footwork on like out of the release of routes. And he's not fantastic about like adapting to sort of like the route redirections. If he gets bumped off of his route, it's hard for him to sort of adapt to that and get back on. And you definitely know that guys with his size, they're going to try to be physical with him and try to not necessarily let him get to his spots. Because if you do, it's going to be pretty much a moneymaker for him. Overall, he kind of plays a little bit like a very athletic tight end, which we've seen what Kyle Pitts was able to do in his first season with obviously a pretty mediocre offense with the Atlanta Falcons. And I think that he has a little bit of a higher ceiling than Pitts has at least shown so far. So I think that over the first couple of years, he can follow a pretty similar path to him, which is not a bad guy to be compared to. I think one thing for him is, can he stay in good enough shape at his size to sort of keep himself out of the potential moving to tight end position conversation?
The Tim Giannini. He talks a lot, so I don't have to. On to the next one.
Staple.
Jameson Williams of Alabama is our next receiver. He uses his quick feet to separate off the release, and he has very good releases off the line. He changes gears mid-route and has the high-end speed going downfield, so that, sort of change in speed can really throw off some corners, and he's able to get open that way. He has made some tough catches, and he showed the ability to track the ball well, both from the outside and in the slot. And he's also utilized on jet sweeps. He body catches the ball at times. That's the one weakness when, with the technical part of catching a football. But the one big concern about Jameson Williams, and we kind of have to talk about it, is that knee. His torn ACL in the national championship game in January. It's a definite concern that may hurt his draft stock. Shouldn't hurt it too much because Jameson Williams is a really good talent, but you kind of got to talk about it. Otherwise, a really good receiver.
Yeah, for me, he's definitely a receiver I wish we got to see more of at the combine. When he's healthy, he's truly an electric receiver lined up on the outside or in the slot. But he's got the speed to dust a lot of corners in man coverage. But you talk about him being a little bit on the lighter side at 6'1", 180. But he's got very quick and solid hands. He can make some pretty difficult catches if you give them the ball in space. His speed can torch guys both vertically or laterally. Especially one of the things on longer routes, it's really hard to keep up with him. Basically, if you let him get essentially through the route, he's going to find some point along the way to get that separation. But you talk about the big question mark being that ACL. That's going to be a thing that teams look at a lot. I don't want to knock it too much against him, though, because you've seen a lot of guys that have come back from ACLs
I don't either,
and been very solid. But obviously, you still got to talk about it. The other concern that I've seen a little bit of, and in some of the film watching, is he sometimes lacks in a little bit of like a competitive edge on certain plays when it comes to finishing plays. Sometimes he's been seen sort of not finishing routes or letting the play go once he's realized he's not really in like one of the main options. So I feel like some scouts and teams are going to check that out and just sort of keep an eye on his overall attitude and whether or not he's going to be a little bit of a me guy and sort of back off and not really be there when he's not the one basically the plays being ran for. But overall, obviously a very talented guy. I could be completely overestimating his ability to care about the overall game of football, but he's going to be a very, very fun guy to see on the field as long as he's healthy.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. Sometimes these wide receivers are what you would call me players. You got to be we players, not me players. Because
he can still do
he can do a lot of things.
You can do a lot of things for your overall offense, even if you're not the one catching the ball. Because especially with his speed and explosiveness, you can use him on things underneath, even as just simple distraction routes to sort of try to get a second defender in the area, pull a safety over somewhere. You got to be able to understand that helps your team as a whole. But we'll see if that becomes any type of issue for him at the next level.
Jameson
Hard to
Williams,
tell.
everybody. Now we're going to move on to our next receiver, which is Ohio State's Chris Olave. See, now the only way I can really describe Chris Olave is he is fast. We talked about Garrett Wilson's high end speed. He's not the fastest receiver on his own team. Chris
Nope.
Olave has fantastic top end speed. And even watching him at the combine run the 40, like he just looked faster than everybody
It's
else.
just effortless.
Like, yeah, there are some receivers that ran 4.2, but Chris Olave, like, just watching him fly down the field, it's like, this guy
It's
can
fun to
run a little
watch.
bit, just a little bit. You know, some other strengths about Chris Olave is that he has quick feet that allows for good separation at the line. He tracks the ball over his shoulder well, and he was a good red zone threat for Ohio State. He doesn't tip off of his break at the stem of the route. You know, he's deceptive when he gets to the top of it and just kind of doesn't really, tell what he's going to do that well. So he gets open more. He needs to be more physical in his routes, though. His frame at 6', 187 means a speedy outside receiver, which is great. A lot of teams can use that, but that's kind of the niche that he falls under with his skill set and his frame. And with that speed, he can really do a better job of creating, yards after the catch.
Yeah, for me, I mean, I think he's arguably like the smoothest receiver and route runner in his draft class. Obviously, you talk about that elite speed. He has that incredible burst to free up space on deep routes across the middle, even little underneath stuff. You've seen those speed guys be really useful and just getting them into open field. Another thing is he's got great body control, and he can adjust his speed to track the ball. And he contorts his body to make real difficult catches. And he comes out of his routes very smoothly and stays on balance, like you talked about with that staying on balance at the end of those routes. Couple noticeable weaknesses for me playing at the next level, one of them being his hand strength overall to come down with contested catches, especially you talk about obviously the speed of some of those guys. He's going to be lining up on the outside. But overall, I think he's a bit of a weaker wide receiver in terms of overall strength, obviously hands and specifics, but he's kind of shown that he's been able to kind of get ran over by corners at the next level in terms of like run blocking as a wide receiver. And in that aspect, he's got a lot to be desired when it comes to strength. But if you work on that, keep that speed, get that hand strength up, he's got a lot of talent to get open and make a lot of catches. I think he could be a very, very valuable number 2 guy, where you either use for like getting just like distracting and getting guys off of certain routes, like pulling a safety over, something like that. But we'll see what happens for him and where he ends up. But he's got a lot of talent, a lot of speed to really burn some guys at the next level.
Yeah, there's a lot to like about future Green Bay Packer Chris Olave. So now we're going to move on
It's a little bit bold.
Now we're going to move on to another future Green Bay Packer, Treylon Burks. I'm making predictions right off the bat. We're going to get 1 or 2 of them. If we don't, I'm going to lose it. Anyway.
Well, we'll see about that one.
Enough about the Packers. On to Treylon Burks. Standing at 6'2", 225, he has a really good combination of size and speed. That size, he's one of the bigger wide receivers in this draft class. It allows him to bully smaller corners that try to press him at the line. He uses his frame to get separation really well. He is great at getting yards after the catch, and he has very soft hands that allow him to make tough catches that are outside of his frame. He is primarily used in short to intermediate routes, so we haven't seen him that much in the deep ball, but that was just kind of how he was used at Arkansas. He can improve his footwork into the break, and he really didn't do much at the combine of note. But I feel like if you're just going off the combine, you're not really looking at the whole picture of what Treylon
small
Burks,
sample size.
Yeah, that is an incredibly small sample size. Guys have bad showcases sometimes. It happens. And with the skill set that Treylon Burks has, that combination, size, speed, catching ability, I have him all the way up at my wide receiver 3 on my draft board. So I really like what Treylon Burks brings to the table.
Yeah, I think he's possibly the most balanced between size, strength, and speed in this draft. You talk about that size at 6'2", 225, running a 4.55 40-yard dash, keeps him in a pretty decent conversation in terms of speed. I have him at my number 5, but like you said, with a lot of this on him, you can definitely argue to put him at higher than number 5. Big thing for him is he has really big, strong hands that make him a great pass catcher in 50-50 situations, as well as all across the board. His overall strength in general is very impressive. And I think
them
that
hands
size
strong, but them hands soft.
Yes, this is true. That size to speed ratio, I think, will do him really well because it makes him a matchup nightmare for a lot of teams, whether they decide to focus on keeping up with him speed wise or matching him up with a little bit of a bigger guy that can handle the physicality. Um, One of the things I think he can work on a little bit better is just some of the general route running stuff. As a receiver of his size, he's clearly not going to be one of the top like elite elusive route runners, a guy like Olave or Wilson. Um, but another thing for him is I think whether or not he can keep himself at a pretty decent like playing weight that can keep him up at that size. I know I mentioned that a little bit earlier for London as well. But you want to make sure that you can keep yourself in conversation with of not becoming a athletic tight end. So I think that that's going to be something that he can surely focus on. But he's very balanced. He's got a lot of things he does well, not necessarily anything that he's like the best in his class. But I think that makes him. It shows that there's a lot of areas to improve on, so he can improve a lot and make himself a pretty decent name for himself at the next level if he falls into the right situation.
Yeah, there's a lot to like about not just Treylon Burks, but all of these top 5 guys. So this is where kind of the field separates between the top 5. But we got some guys in the rest of the field that we're going to very quickly run through. We don't want
Lightning
this video
round.
we don't want this video to run too long. So we're gonna do a little bit of we're gonna run through a little bit of a lightning round, which we're going to start with George Pickens of Georgia. The one thing I like about George Pickens is he has endless athleticism that he uses to his advantage. You know, there aren't too many major flaws. He, I think, is the guy to draft outside of that top 5. The catch radius is nuts. He has the knack for the big highlight reel catch. The availability's kind of been a concern because he tore his ACL in 21, only played a few amount of games, small sample size. But I think if you develop George Pickens, he can be a really good guy.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's a great balance of size and speed. He can use a little bit in the strength department, but a fun little highlight of him is shushing the Michigan sideline, absolutely obliterating a cornerback and then shushing them again. But overall, as a player, at least, he's solid on coming off of routes, pretty decent footwork. Outside of general strength, I think he can work on defending his space and 50-50 balls. But like you talk about, that athleticism is off the charts. There's a lot he can work on. And at the next level, he really can make a really big jump if he gets the right help to really expand his game.
Yeah. After that, we'll go to North Dakota State's Christian Watson. Now, he is a big dude, 6'4", 208. But you want to talk about a guy who has really great size and really great speed. He runs a 4.36 40-yard dash. That is lightning for a guy of that size. So he has great body control and he has good hands, but there are some things that are like a little bit lacking. He needs to be more physical in his routes, use his size a little bit better. He's not the most natural pass catcher ever. He didn't have many opportunities in North Dakota State's run heavy offense, and he played FCS competition, but the metrics are there for Christian Watson to make an impact at the next level.
Yeah, you talk about a lot of those base skills and abilities. That size and speed is really, really hard to deal with. I think that he has a really good chance of being able to work well through the air, especially in those 50-50 balls, getting up there at 6'4". He can really separate himself on some of those routes. He's gotten a little bit better at route running over like this past year. I think that's something that he'll continue to improve on. Overall, I think in terms of little general weaknesses, I think that he can work on some of his impulses and instincts as a receiver. Like you talked about, he's not too experienced in the actual pass catching, didn't get a whole lot of experience at North Dakota State. But I think he's definitely one of the more raw, I would call maybe a little bit of like a late round boom or bust, where if you take him later on, you might be able to see some really great production if you're able to pull the right things out of him. So I think there's a lot of interesting things to look at in terms of Christian Watson.
Yeah, in terms of like a later round pick, I actually see him being a day 2 pick, as the Green Bay Packers take him in the second round. So
are the Green Bay Packers just going to take like 4 wide receivers?
We're taking all of the wide receivers. Every single one.
And tell that to the front office.
And besides, if I call them all future Green Bay Packers, some of them's got to come true. In theory. Anyway, now we're going to go to future Green Bay Packer, Jahan Dotson.
I'm beginning to see a pattern here.
Yeah, we're going to draft them all. But anyway, the thing about Jahan Dotson. Yeah, right. He has deceptively good ball skills and a good catch radius. He catches the ball with ease. He's got really good fundamentals in catching it with his hands. He has high end body control.
What, is he going to catch it with his feet?
We could be playing the other kind of football. Anyway, he runs super sharp routes and he can make multiple cuts mid route, which is that part of his game is NFL ready. He's not exactly a yards after the catch specialist, and standing at 5'11", 178 pounds, he's got a tiny frame that will leave him susceptible to bigger, more physical corners that will maybe try to push him around. But with Jahan Dotson, it's a lot to like.
Yeah, he's smooth. He's elusive. He's got that really good instant acceleration. I think that he can work pretty well on all three levels of the field. Problems are, of course, you talk about that size. He definitely is going to be attempted to push around a lot. Now, one thing I think that he does have is a little bit of a bonus in terms of overall helping the team is he is a talented punt returner. So that could be potentially a little bit of a double-sided role for him in the future, depending on where he ends up.
Future Green Bay Packer?
Obviously, that size is going to allow him to be susceptible at least to a lot of those bigger defensive backs, but I think that he can definitely make an effect on the next level with somebody.
With somebody. And that is all we got for the receiver breakdowns in this year's draft class. Which receivers will become Green Bay Packers? All of them? One of them? I hope, or else I'll lose my mind. That joke has run its course. So we'll wrap this video up. We covered the quarterbacks, the running backs. Now we just covered the receivers. So that'll do it for our positional breakdowns. We'll have more draft content coming all the way up until the draft on Thursday. We'll see where these guys end up. So if you want more running the table content, you can watch that. So like and subscribe for more of our stuff because you can watch it here, and we out.